He was the king. I don't care what you say. He was the king. Welcome into 1017 FM and 710 Keel. Welcome into another edition of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and she believes Elvis was the king, too.
I do believe Elvis was the king.
She is PLPC Carla McCormick, and I know that our ace producer, thank you very much, it knows that Elvis was the king. He is Rapid Ruben Wright.
Hello, good evening, everybody.
And I know you probably have a collection of E from Heartbreak Hotel
I have
to Suspicious Minds.
I have in my house. It is a bronzed bust of Elvis. I have that.
See, how did I know that? How did I know that? Of course he does. My kind of boy.
Jeez.
Had it for Christmas one year.
Pass me that jelly donut, would you? We've got something important to talk about today. Do you ever get down on yourself?
Of course.
Yeah, I do too. And I think we all do. Got a question in on the Facebook page.
How about that?
Yeah, and all of us can do this. The Facebook page, Strategies for Living. You can communicate with us during the show or after the show.
Suggestions
for
shows.
The beauty of Facebook. So here's the question, dear Carla and David. I'm a local therapist. Many of my clients are terribly hard on themselves. I have to admit I get caught up in criticizing myself sometimes too, if I'm honest. I think many of your listeners struggle with this problem. I want to help myself and others too. Can you do a program on how to tame our inner critic?
So
Isn't that a great question?
That's an awesome question.
Yeah.
Can I just tell my inner critic to shut the bleep up?
No, we're probably not going to do that.
I haven't paid off the FCC this month.
Yeah, no, let's not do that. Instead, let's come back and spend the hour talking about it. Maybe this is Strategies for Living. Maybe as our conversation unfolds, we will come up with some strategies for you to silence that negativity within, that inner critic. Folks, thank you for tuning in to Strategies for Living. We are brought to you by CADA, the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse of Northwest Louisiana, helping individuals and families now for 60 years. We're also brought to you by Jerry Anderson, State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well Inspirational Books and Gifts, and Resilient House. I should have known. We'll be back. Stay off the shoes, Carla. Stay off the shoes. Addiction takes a toll on your body, mind, spirit, and relationships. When you're ready, there is addiction treatment in Shreveport with the highest quality behavioral health and addiction specialists together with spiritual guidance and holistic experts to help you heal for good. Call 833
I've heard people say that
Wait, this is the wrong "Can't Get Enough of Your Love."
I was.
I meant to play the BTO one.
No. Let's just let this play.
Let it ride out for a second.
And this will be an exercise for you not to get into your inner critic. See, when we share love and make love and
doesn't seem to me like it's enough.
I love it.
Hold on, folks. It's
Here
going to be
coming.
a fun
It's
ride.
coming. Here we go. You didn't let it build up.
We can't. We
Okay.
can't let it build up.
I was looking forward to it. I was getting into Barry. Welcome back into Strategies for a Living, 101.7 FM and 710 Keel, and marriage and family therapist David McMillan, PLPC, Carla McCormick, and the great ace of the airways, Reuben Wright.
Sometimes.
Well, no. Even then, see, if you'd have just, we'd have made a way. We'd have connected it. So we're talking about the inner critic today, and this is a deal that it affects all of us. It doesn't matter if you're a therapist. It doesn't matter if you're not. It's a lifelong struggle for a lot of people, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And some people never, I mean, those inner voices that tell them they're not enough or,
Yeah.
Whatever your inner voice says to you, some people never get past that. They live their lives listening to those voices.
Yeah, and I think there may be, for some of us, there are multiple voices, and I'm not saying we're multiple personalities by any means, but there is a theory out there, a theory of therapy called internal family systems. A gentleman by the name of Dr. Richard Schwartz developed this, and it's a wonderful theory. And it basically says that there are parts of us that we put into exile, and that it's almost like we keep them walled off. We won't let them out. Perhaps these are the parts of us that we really scream for us to go into some type of counseling or therapy or self-work or meditative practice or whatever to work on these parts. But we keep them so walled off, according to Dr. Schwartz, that there are other parts of ourselves that are manager parts that kind of keep those inner voices, these exiled voices, hidden, and that those operate on a consistent and regular basis. And then there's other parts. He calls them firefighters, and they're managers too, but they come out under extreme stress, and that those parts, are some of those parts are parts that will get us into trouble. And so I really like his theory, because it's like you can even imagine a judge up behind the in the courtroom with his banging the gavel, pointing a finger at us. You can imagine your little school marm teacher with her ruler. In our case, it would be a nun, right?
Right.
Yeah. In my case, Attila the nun. But we won't talk about that. So it may be helpful to even, identify maybe where some of these come from. Maybe not an individual person, although, that could be helpful too. But we all have these parts of us that are quick to criticize, and it's an ongoing conversation that runs in our head, right?
Well, and I see that, and I know that there are all. I mean, there's lots of schools of psychology where you have the parent, the adult, the child, or whatever you want to call it. We are all multifaceted.
Yes.
And there are times for us to be childlike. There are times for us to be the adult, and and I think not getting off too far into the weeds, but it's okay to see yourself in different roles and to have different parts of your personality. It's when we become critical of those parts,
right,
that that we get kind of start to get messed up, I guess. And you know, for me, it's not even the parts of that. It is just my negative self-talk. You know, who do you think you are? Why
Yeah.
do you think you can do that?
Yeah.
You know, do you know how many people have tried to do that and failed? What makes you so special? It's, you know, and everybody has their own voice. It's how do we turn it down, so to speak? How do we change the channel on that voice? How do we turn that negative into something positive, right?
Well, exactly. And if we can define our inner critic, I mean, you can define it in a number of ways, but it's that part of our personality structure that is most critical of us. It tells us that how bad we are, how stupid we are, how crazy we are, how worthless we are. We could go on and on and on with those adjectives. And of course, we need to take a step back from that and, you know, honestly assess whatever it is that we've said or whatever it is that we've done, you know, but there's no, I mean, how many times have we said already on the program since we've been back on daily that blame is absolutely worthless, you know, shame and blame. Both absolutely worthless.
It doesn't matter.
Right. So, you know, of course we've got to step back and be able to look at the things that we are doing or have done, but we also need to be kind and compassionate to ourselves as we do that process, because you know, there's nothing good that's going to come from shaming or blaming anybody, and that includes ourselves, right?
Well, because you can't move forward. I saw a quote the other day. It said, "Don't judge me by my past because I don't live there anymore."
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
thought,
I like
you
that.
know, that's so apropos for what we're talking about. Those are things that we've done. It's not who we are.
Right.
And the way you move forward is you change that behavior. But before you can change that behavior, you have to change the tape, so to speak, that's running in your head about that behavior.
Yeah. If I say to myself, I look at something that I've done, or a conversation or encounter, and I say, you know, that was a mistake, wasn't it? That's different from, David, you stupid idiot. Why did you do that? Or why did you say that? I mean, those two feel very different, don't they?
Well, yeah. And if I talked to you that way, you would be unhappy with me. You would be angry with me if I talked to you the way you talk to yourself.
I would hope so. And that's a great point, Carla. That's a great point. How many of us would be quick to say to, you know, a spouse or a buddy, a friend, would say, hey, back up, Jack. You know,
Right.
Whoa. And yet, the private conversations that we have with ourselves, you know, how are we talking to ourselves on an ongoing basis? What are we saying to ourselves? What are we observing there? Because it's in that observing, it's in that ability to take that step back and witness, you know, our thinking, that we can say, well, okay, I know that I'm not these thoughts. I'm the observer of these thoughts. I then can be the chooser of these thoughts. Some of the thoughts are going to come in and be negative, aren't they?
Right, but they don't
But
get to stay.
They don't get to stay, and they don't have to hang around.
So, you know, one of the things that I tell clients often is to think about what you're thinking about. And one of my favorite exercises is to keep a running total, keep a tally of how many times during a day you say something negative to yourself, or, you know, in your head, or even out loud. Even little things like, oh, you're so stupid. Oh, you idiot. Oh, you big fat cow. Whatever derogatory remarks you make about yourself, make a mark. And at the end of the day, look and see how many times do I say something mean or ugly to myself,
Yeah,
and start paying attention to that.
yeah, yeah. You know, we probably need to go back to the beginning if we really want to take a look at this. And what I mean by that is, you know, we're all born Buddhist.
Which you mean?
Well, developmentally, we're all, Buddhist. The kind of the Buddhist idea. We are
Do you
one.
mean fat and chubby and
No, no,
bald?
no, 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 no.
Oh.
We're one. I'm one. I'm one with everything, and I'm one with the world. I mean, it's
Right.
kind of the Buddhist. We're all one. We're all born Buddhist because when in infant development, a baby at birth and for the first months of life does not distinguish itself as different from its parents,
Separate, yes.
separate from its parents. And are separate from anything else. It thinks that everything that is around it, doesn't even think, but it
Right.
senses that everything that's around it is part of it, right?
Right.
And the process of growth and development is a process of beginning to understand. It's the beginning of the formation of that separate self, the ego. Dun 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 dun.
The ego comes in,
and
yes.
and so and then here comes the birth of the ego that says I am a separate me, and then there's the capacity to begin to program that separate me. So we'll talk about that when we come back, and we'll talk about some steps, some strategies, if you will, to settle down, maybe even silence the inner critic within us. We're tackling that today on Strategies. Had a Facebook question. We're trying to answer it. You can ask a question of Carla and I. All you got to do is go to our Facebook page and message us. We'll be back. More strategies as we tame our inner critic today. And welcome back. Welcome back into 1017 FM and 710 Keel. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. Good recovery there. Yes.
We're cheer dancing to Billy Joel down here.
Billy Joel? No, that's Elton John.
I mean, yeah, oopsie.
Yeah. Oopsie. Okay, get your inner critic going.
You dumbass.
But remember now, you were born Buddhist, right?
Yes. Fat and bald.
Fat and bald, and you said you were going back there. I don't understand.
Everything that goes, it's like, the circle of life.
But so what that means is we're all born into this symbiotic. There's this early symbiotic phase where we're all part of. We don't distinguish ourselves from our caregivers, and even the best of moms and dads are going to have bad days.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think it even begins there. Now, we don't understand words at that point, obviously, but we read energy. I mean, we're energy beings, aren't we? And so,
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, because, you look at a nervous, jittery, anxious mom, she's going to have a nervous, jittery, anxious kid for the most part. I mean, why are the second kids so relaxed and chill? Because we're more relaxed and chill.
Right.
As parents, of course they do.
So in early development, we don't have a good sense of distinguishing in here from out there. That comes.
Right.
That comes in the, in the developmental process. So what's the infant going to do? It's going to begin to, if mom does have a bad day or a lot of bad days, then that's all going to get internalized. The mother's negative emotion and is going to be internalized into the infant. And for some of us, that's the start. That's the beginning. And this is not everything goes back to mom. No. This is not blame mom. It's just it's normal growth and development.
What it is.
Yeah. And so the seeds of self-judgment are planted very early at that pre-verbal level. And it's even in the most loving families, even in the best of parenting, moms and dads occasionally have bad days. And it's just that simple. And some moms and dads have lots of bad days, So then when we go to the other extreme, children who have been abused or abandoned are criticized or belittled, obviously are affected, much more severely. But as we begin to develop, and we do develop that separate sense of self, we have this operating system that begins to form, and man, it gets loaded with words and messages, and those words and messages turn into beliefs, and those words, messages, and beliefs turn into stories that we tell ourselves about ourselves and about the world. And some of that just runs very automatically, Carla.
Well, and then it also becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
If I'm looking for you to be rude and angry because I think you don't like women, I'm going to find every little piece of evidence to back up my. I'm
going to go looking for it.
My opinion.
Absolutely.
So I will naturally find it. So. Okay, so now we know that we get them. Now, how do we change them?
First of all, we need to understand that if you're critical, if you're listening and you're one of us who is critical of ourselves, as the therapist who sent in the question on Facebook indicated and was honest and said, okay, I hear my client struggle with this and it triggers me. I struggle with it. So first of all, to know we're not alone. Many, if not most people, have self-doubt and struggle with being harsh in their inner criticism. But you don't have to be. You don't have to remain a victim of your own verbal abuse.
That's good.
Well, yeah, and I mean we need to label it for what it is, because you called it earlier. You said, if you talk to me like I talk to myself, I'd tell you
we wouldn't be friends.
We wouldn't be friends, and I'd say real quickly, back up, Jack. Don't do that. And yet, why do we think it's okay to abuse ourselves? So but many of us do. So let's talk about some proactive steps, some strategies, if you will,
Okay.
that we can take. We've kind of touched around the first one. The first one is to begin to develop an awareness of your thoughts.
Think about what you're thinking about.
Know that your thoughts are not, know that your thoughts are separate from you. And the best way that I can ask you to think about this is to do a short exercise where you step back, even if it's for 3 minutes, 2 minutes, which is at first when you do this is going to seem like an eternity. In fact, if 2 minutes is too long, do it for a minute. Do it for 30 seconds. But just take a mental step back. Get yourself quiet. You might set a timer on your phone. Let it go off in a minute or 2 minutes, and pay attention to what you're thinking. Just observe that. Don't judge. Just observe. Just watch the thoughts go through, and if we don't judge, see where we get hooked is immediately when a thought comes in that's negative towards us. Well, that was a stupid thing to do, or that was a dumb thing to say, or why did you do that, David? Just to be observing the thoughts, I don't have to hook into them. I just recognize that I think things sometimes that aren't true. I've said this on the program before. Who is our, who is our idea of an enlightened being? Would it be the Pope? Would it be the Dalai Lama? Would it be the great late Billy Graham? Whoever it is. If we could see their thoughts, if we could observe their thoughts as their thoughts are, we'd probably say they're absolutely freaking nuts. They're crazy. What's the difference between an advanced personality like the Dalai Lama or Pope Francis or Billy Graham? It's that they don't buy into that. They don't buy into their own thinking. And instead, they understand that they can be choosers and deciders of their thoughts. That makes sense?
That's the key right there.
Yeah.
They're choosers and deciders. So you can't, or at least I don't know how, to control the thoughts that come into my head.
I think it's impossible.
But what I can control is if I let them stay.
Absolutely.
And that's where you have to pay attention. That's where so if I catch myself, in my morning meetings that I have with myself every morning, if I catch myself worrying.
And by the way, doing a morning meeting every morning with yourself is a great idea, because again, back to the internal family systems model, there's a lot of us in us. And that doesn't mean we're multiple personalities. It's just a lot of voices there.
Yeah, when we have to have a meeting every morning
Yeah,
and go, where
yeah.
are we going today? What's
Yeah.
on the agenda?
Yeah.
What's important? What's not important? But if I catch myself going off into worrying, or if I catch myself going off into the weekend where I went to dinner with friends and I said something so stupid and I embarrassed myself, or I think I embarrassed myself, then that's the chance where I can just keep going and keep going and keep going, or I can go, yeah. I did my best and come back.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to stay there.
Right.
I don't want to do that.
I don't want to replay that tape and pull up a chair and pop some popcorn and just live with that. That over and over and over and over again. I mean, I've told you this before. It blew my mind when I realized that not everybody left a lunch date and replayed every conversation and criticized themselves for everything that they said the whole way home. I just assumed everyone did that. So when I realized that not everyone did that, I thought, oh gosh, there's something really bad wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that was my inner critic. That's what we're talking about
That's
today.
exactly what we're talking about. And so many times, I mean, that, if we look at the way that we are made, we're naturally creative, and we're naturally calm, and we're naturally curious, and we're naturally connected one to another, and we have courage and clarity and confidence and compassion, and we're contented. But we learn we learn to do different things.
Don't you think that so much of that comes from being from comparison,
Oh, I
from
think a
being
lot of it
jealous
does. Yeah,
and envious, and
I think some of it does. Yeah.
and constantly comparing ourselves to others. Like, I'm perfectly happy with my trip to, you know, to Arkansas until I hear my friend went to,
Machu
Glacier,
Picchu.
yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere great.
Yeah.
I mean, and where we could be okay with ourselves until we start comparing.
Right. Yeah.
So,
The
I mean, for me, I think a lot of it lies there.
So that's the second strategy, is to make a decision. Oftentimes I talk about the power of choice and decision. So you've got to make a decision.
So the first one was
First one is to develop an
attention.
awareness of your thoughts. Just
Okay.
tune into your thinking.
And then
you
the
might
sec-
even think of wait. WAIT. What am I thinking?
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you like that?
Yeah.
So wait. Just wait. Develop an awareness of your thoughts. Maybe wait can remind you I'm thinking.
Is
And
that
so
a fat joke? You already called me Buddha, and now you're telling me to wait. Okay.
wait. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm totally I'm totally being harsh to her tonight, aren't I? I'm getting her back for all of that criticizing
just
she's
one.
done.
She calls us nerds and stuff.
Yes,
like
she does.
that, so
As a matter of fact, thank you for reminding me of that.
Thanks, Ruben.
Yeah. So we've got to make a decision then to stop ruminating. If you make a mistake or you have a bad day, of course the temptation is going to be to replay it, right? But we got to make a decision to stop. We got to remind ourselves that that's something that we did, and that's not who we are.
And we are not our mistakes. But I mean,
Right.
for me, I think about, like, if you spilled spaghetti on your shirt and you came
Very
here with,
good, very good possibility
with a
too.
big spaghetti stain, I wouldn't say, "You big slob." I would just be like, "Whoops, David had spaghetti."
No, you'd
But-
point it out, though. She'd say, hey, folks on Facebook, look at that spaghetti stain.
But if I came here with a big spaghetti spot on my shirt, I would be like, "Oh my God, you're so messy." I would criticize myself. If I guess where I'm going is, if I wouldn't say it to you, then I shouldn't say it to me.
I totally agree. But now, as I say, to stop ruminating, I'm not saying, hey, tell yourself, don't think about that. Because it's kind of like, that's like if I say close your eyes and don't think of a pink elephant. Do not think of stop thinking of a pink elephant. So the more you try to avoid thinking about something, the more you're likely to focus on it instead. So in this strategy, to stop ruminating, distract yourself, maybe with an activity. When you see that you're doing something like this, even if it's short, go for a short walk. Organize your desk. Shift gears to a completely different subject. That'll help stop the critical thoughts before they spiral out of control. So the key is catch them early, and then shift gears.
Move a muscle, change your mind.
There you go. We're talking about taming our inner critic today on strategies. We're going through some strategies.
Yeah, and
that
some
will help
real
you
life
tame it.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's easy to do.
We'll continue on in just a moment.
Going back in the alley. And I kept rolling them seven. And winning all them pods. My luck was so good I could do no wrong. I just kept on rolling.
Welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living, 101.7 FM, 710 KEEL, PLPC, Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan. We're talking about some strategies today to calm the inner critic. We all have one, don't we? You got to turn your mic on. It's
Oops,
got to
Ruben.
do that. Got to do that button, that red button there, Carla.
Golly, Ruben, you suck.
I love it.
You don't need an inner critic when you have an outer critic.
It's getting hot up in here. And Ruben and I are going to eat spaghetti after this.
I made them hungry for spaghetti.
Yeah, exactly. So we're talking about some strategies to calm the inner critic that we all have. So we've talked about you've got to develop an awareness of your thoughts and be willing to step back and observe. Wait, what am I thinking? You got to make a decision to stop ruminating. And this is not as simple as don't think about that, but it's when you recognize that you're thinking about it. And that's a great word, recognize. What does that look at? Look at the word itself, recognize. When I recognize you, I'm rethinking you every time I recognize you.
Cognition.
Yeah, cognition, rethinking. So another strategy that I would suggest is, if you were giving a friend advice about what you're hearing yourself say, if a friend expressed the self-doubt that you're expressing to yourself, hopefully you wouldn't say, well, yeah, I agree, you are stupid, or you can't do you can't do anything right. In fact, nobody likes you. You're not going to do that, right?
No.
How would you talk to your friend? So ask yourself, if you were hearing a friend talk in this way, what would you say? It would likely be more compassionate and encouraging, wouldn't it?
It would definitely be passionate and encouraging.
Yeah, and okay, you made a mistake, Carla, but it's not the end of the world.
Big deal.
Yeah, step back. It's just a mistake. Today's performance, okay, well, maybe it wasn't so great, but you're going to bat another day, right?
And nobody expects you to be perfect. And you're being too hard on yourself. And because we say those things because those things are true.
Absolutely.
Not because we're just giving lip service. And at the end of the day, what I usually ask myself, what helps me to change that when that negative tape starts rolling is, does it really matter?
Oh, so you're saying that's another strategy. You just threw out another strategy.
See how smart I am?
Yes, you are. Examine the evidence. That is a strategy. Recognize when those critical thoughts are exaggeratingly negative. Exaggeratingly, is that a word?
It is tonight.
Okay, so we made it up. But when is that an exaggeration of negativity? I'm never. A good way to look at this is: are you using words that we say are best avoided? In relationships, words like never, always, you. Are you hearing yourself use a lot of those words? And examine the evidence. Where's the evidence that however you're talking to yourself? Examine the evidence critically. Might even do the old draw the line down the paper thing, and again, from this non-judgmental, non-critical point of view, from a neutral point of view, where's the evidence? What's on one side? What's on the other? Let's say, you can't do anything right. Well, examine be willing to really examine the evidence there. Is that really true? Do you absolutely positively know it to be true?
That you're a big loser and
Yeah.
you can't do anything right, and you're always a quitter. I
Right.
mean, those kinds of big global negativities. Not like, oh, I flubbed up the speech today. Most people can get over that.
Right.
It's the big global ones like, I'm such a loser. Nobody likes me. I don't have any friends. I'm boring.
Right.
I'll never get this. Those kinds of big global
Always,
things.
never, you, all of those are, those are words we need to avoid with other people and within our own minds.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
So,
they were almost always never true.
yeah, question that. Is it true? Do I absolutely positively know it to be true? In examining the evidence, you might even want to go a little bit further. What happens when I do think those thoughts? When I do think those negative thoughts, what does that produce in my life? And where would I be if I didn't think those thoughts, if I chose differently? All of that is part of examining the evidence, I think. You're pretty smart, Carla.
Well, thank you very much. And I think if you don't choose to examine the evidence, I think you need to figure out why. Because if I know what if I examine the evidence and I realize what the problem is, that means I have to maybe admit to myself that it's me.
Yeah.
If I keep getting a job and every boss is mean to me and none of my coworkers get along with me and everyone that I work with is a problem at the last 4 jobs that I've had, I might need to look at the evidence that might say maybe I'm the problem and maybe I need a change.
Okay, so what you're saying is actually another strategy. See,
Jeez.
there you go again.
Oopsie, I'm jumping the gun, guys.
So replace overly critical thoughts with more accurate statements. That's a strategy here. If it's an overly pessimistic thought, convert it to a more rational, realistic statement. If you find yourself thinking something like, you never do anything right, replace that with a more balanced statement. Well, okay, sometimes I do really well, and sometimes, I mess up. So I've got to look at these last couple of jobs, and I've got to examine that, okay, I'm the common denominator here. Let me really look at what do I need to change. And we could do that in a job. We could do that in relationships.
Well, if I have a client that says I can't control my temper. You can't ever control your temper. No, I can't ever control my temper. I just flash out and I get mad.
Mm-hmm.
And then if I can say, okay, well, what about at work? Do you control your temper at work?
Oh, well, yeah,
Do you
of course.
yell and scream at your boss?
Well, if I did, I'd get fired.
Right.
Okay,
so what? You can control
Gotcha.
your temper. Yeah.
Gotcha.
And that's the evidence. That means you know how. You just have to choose to do it.
Yeah.
Or find a way to do it.
Again, the power of decision and thought. When you find yourself thinking something, extremely exaggerated, especially an exaggerated negative thought, respond with give yourself a more accurate statement.
Okay, so I didn't control my temper once today, but I did control it 5
For
other times.
8 hours during the time, especially my boss was around, and
So
I
did
so I know I
something good.
can do it.
And tomorrow I'll try to do better.
Yeah. So and we another strategy is to go to the extreme. And we touched on this a second ago when we were talking about examining the evidence, but consider how bad it would be.
Oh, I like this one.
Consider how bad it would be if the thoughts you were thinking or the thoughts you were thinking were in fact true.
What's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Sometimes it's tempting to envision, a mishap, just a simple mishap turning into a complete catastrophe. But often the worst case scenario really is not as bad as we imagine it, right?
Most often it's
Most
not.
often it's not.
And most of the things that you think about, all the things you've worried about just in the last month, and how many of those things didn't happen.
Right. She's a smart girl. I mean, I'm through and through.
Have a good teacher.
Reuben?
Yeah.
Yeah. We're talking about taming our self-critics today here on Strategies. We'll come back, wrap up our conversation. Stay right where you are.
said. This is exactly what I said. When you ugly like John, you're just a natural got to be cool.
I love it. Oh, you gotta love Ruben. Welcome back into Strategies for Living, 101.7 FM, 710 Keel, and PLPC Carla McCormick, marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and Rapid Ruben Wright coming in with the bumper music.
Good evening again.
He keeps us from taking ourselves too seriously.
I love it. I love it. We're talking about taming the inner critic. We've been talking about taming the inner critic today, and I guess the thing that I would, kind of leave us with, you might, have something different, is balance. I mean, balance, acceptance with self-improvement. I think you have, there's a difference between always telling yourself you're not good enough and reminding yourself that, okay, we can be better, we can do better, we can improve. And I accept, that's the acceptance part. I accept that I'm a person that has flaws, and I can identify what they are today, and I'm making a decision that I'm going to work. I'm going to work on those, and I'm going to improve. So balance acceptance with self-improvement. Make sense?
I totally believe that, and for me it's rule of fives. Will this matter in 5 minutes? 5 hours, 5 days, 5 weeks. I mean, for the most part, the things that I get worked up about don't matter.
Yeah.
And when I really look at them, they really don't matter.
If I have anxiety in social situations, well, I can accept that, and I can make a decision, to do what I can to work on that. But I'm accepting me. It's the way my system is wired, let's say, or I accept whatever I'm not so good at. We can't be good at everything, so I can stay the course and keep trying to improve. I mean, I was talking to somebody who's going to take the MCAT, and I was thinking earlier today, and I was thinking, gosh, I hope I don't ever have to. And I've avoided something like that, like the plague, as I did chemistry and
Right.
physics and all that stuff. That's just not me. But doesn't mean I couldn't if I had to,
Most assuredly. And,
just
there's
don't want to.
Well, then that's okay.
Yeah.
And it's okay. What does Meg say? My youngest daughter says, Meg says, Mom, you do you because you is good.
You do you because you is, I like that.
So,
I like that.
And that's it's like okay to be me. I mean, there are things I'm good at that you're not, and vice versa. And back to the comparison thing, when I compare myself to other people, I'm always going to find fault.
Absolutely. Hopefully we've tamed some inner critics today. Folks, thank you for tuning in. We've been brought to you by CADA. We've also been brought to you by Jerry Anderson State Farm Insurance, by Learning RX, by Highland Place Rehab and Nursing Center, by Jacob's Well, Inspirational Books and Gifts, and by Resilient House. If today were the last day of your life, you only had one more phone call that you could make, who would you call, and what would you say, and why are you waiting? Make the call. For PLPC Carla McCormick, and for Ruben Wright, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan, and we'll see you next time here on Strategies for Living.
Possibility.
At a joint press conference with Italy's Prime Minister, President Trump said he's open to a face-to-face meeting with Iranian